Hello everybody, welcome to the secret history living in your duckweed, aquarium. So, today we're going to talk about how to get rid of duckweed. Now there are basically three main ways to get rid of duckweed that I like to use. Now, I'm going to explain those real quick, and then also I'm going to show you another little trick about killing some blackbeard algae, and I'll just give you a sneak peek. This is what is happening 30 minutes into the process, but I'll show you in real time what we do too. All right, so let's take a look at this tank. It is a mess, right? There is a lot of duckweed in it. It is so thick that it has started to stack up upon itself and make a skin. It's really impeding the function of my filters. You may be wondering, why am I allowing all this green slime and algae to grow? Well, I actually take that piece off and I let my loaches use it for spawning and also grazing every month or two and switch it up. All right, so the thing about this process that's a little different today is I want to save my red root floaters. These guys, I love these plants. But whenever I grab them, they're covered in duckweed, right? So I can't just scoop around them. So what I'm going to be doing is first I'll clear out enough duckweed that I'll have a space, all right? And I won't do this right this second. Maybe I'll show you an after the process shot. But basically what I'll be doing is looking for the best of these red root floaters, shaking them off so that there's not as much duckweed, so that most of the duckweed is off of there. I put a little bin with water in it right here. All right? But this is going to allow me to wash them one by one, and I only need to save like 20 or 30. Same with the water lettuce. Now, water lettuce is hydrophobic, which is interesting. So watch this when I bring it back out of the water. So I can drip water on it, and it just puddles right off. Isn't that cool? So a lot of aquatic floating plants happen to be able to do this, and it's neat, but it also helps when a leaf is dying. So when it starts to die, it doesn't have those little microfiber hairs, and it won't do that anymore. So you can always pull those leaves off. Now, when you're trying to get duckweed out of a tank but save other plants, there's another problem, and that is underwater. There are the roots of things. So in this case, the red root floaters have shallow roots. Not that big of a deal. But these guys have pretty darn long roots. They look like those tripods in War of the Worlds, the remake. So, to get them out, you really need to clear a space, and then you need to shake as you're coming out of the water. And really, you're going to want another container to dip that in. And then you're going to want to put it into whatever your saving container is. So for me, it's going to be this. This much surface area should repopulate this, no problem. Now, there are two ways that I can tell you out of the three that we can kill this duckweed, remove this duckweed. And the first one is going to be if you don't want to save anything, or if you're done plucking everything out that you do want to save and thoroughly rinsing it of duckweed, what you do is you overflow your tank. Now, there's a couple ways to do this also, because you can see your duckweed will be where your water has evaporated also. All that actually can regerminate, which is a total pain in the butt. So what you can do is refill it up to the top, let it sit overnight, at least overnight, and then hopefully those pieces with a little bit of scrub, or maybe even just running, if you have one of the scrapers that's a flat metal piece, or even just a net, even a credit card, you run it along that edge underwater and get all that off there and just get it into the fish tank. You can also do a lot with it once you get it off there. You can make goldfish food. You can compress it into pellets for like rabbits or any vegetable eating critters, including humans in theory. I do know a few people who have put it in their smoothies and things like that instead of wheatgrass. It's very, very high in protein, believe it or not. It's a very healthy food to eat. Now, you'd probably want to boil it for a minute just because you don't know what's in your fish tank necessarily, salmonella and whatnot. But that's just my opinion. So when I say overflow it, it's just using the principle of it comes up, all of the duckweed comes out. Now, this only works if you have a floor with a drain in it, if you have a mat down around the tank, or if you have a tank on a stand like this one. And I've done it in this tank, and I've also done it in any tank under 20 gallons, because what I can do is just tilt the tank and actually that then put, a book or something under one corner or both corners of it. But be careful. You need to know what kind of tank you have and how strong it is, because the rim is the frame on a lot of, dollar per gallon sale Aquarium tanks and things like that. If it's a tank like this one, a rimless, you really don't want to put any pressure on the bottom that's unequal or more intense in one spot. So you want to be careful and lift the whole thing with a friend maybe and tilt it that way. But that's actually the last thing I did here, and it's all growing back again. Look at the size of this water lettuce. And I want my lilies in here to start really showing their potential. So I'm going to actually clear this out of everything too. But what I did the first time was I just overflowed the thing, and I just put a tarp down basically. I put a Rubbermaid lid, and that overflowed it. Now, some people also prepare, if you're like me and you're going to use this setup because it's so good for spawning babies. I mean, all this stuff is locations for them to hide. So if you have a tank set up like this, another option is to drill a hole about yay high and use that as the drain, especially if you're going to be doing a sump or any other things like that. That's a great way to set it up proactively. Now, I'm assuming that method is not the method that most of you guys wanted to hear. It sounds silly and maybe not feasible for you. So the next method is it's old-fashioned legwork. So you're actually going to just scoop, 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 scoop. And when you do this, there's a problem. So say you have moss and things, as you scoop, that duckweed gets tangled up down in the moss and stuff. So you really want to be gentle with that. And beforehand, you actually want to reach your hands into the tank, clean them first, or put gloves on so that you're not introducing a bunch of bacteria into your tank or whatever was on your hands. But you'll put your hands down past the duckweed slowly and agitate this moss. Now, I've already done that, so there's not a bunch of duckweed stuck in the moss. There are pieces, and I'll have to keep an eye out for that because they'll break loose, float up, and I'll have duckweed all over again. You can see some back in there. But that's just part of the duckweed patrol. It is the coronavirus, it is the herpes, it is the black plague of aquarium keeping. Now, so that's the second way is manual. So the first way was flooding over. That takes a lot of thinking and pre-planning. Second way is manual. So you get a bigger net than this, which is what I'll do later. But I'm just showing you the nature of how it just fills right back in. There can be so much duckweed in these things. You will have pounds of duckweed when you're done, even if you squeeze the water out. And so you can actually make goldfish food and actually any fish that eats a vegetarian diet. You can take this, you can put it in a blender and press it. Use something binding with a little bit of gluten, or you can also just press it itself and then dry it out in the oven. If you have a pasta maker, you can extrude it through that and it will break up as it comes out like a noodle, the handheld ones you squeeze. It'll just break like a ricer kind of effect, or a ricer might work too. Or even a garlic press, but that would be very time consuming. All right, so I'm assuming those first two don't sound so great to you. And so let me tell you the secret of how we're going to keep it away anyhow. And that secret is hiding back here. It's a Powerhead. So get yourself a Powerhead, which is just a little motor and fan, and that's going to keep the top of the water turbulent. In this tank, I literally have allowed the algae to grow down into the water so it doesn't disturb the tank, but there's actually a lot of flow in it. Same on this side. I actually have fishing line hanging down here. If you can see that, I don't know. There's about 20 pieces so that the water just drips straight down into the water and under the water. That's because this is like a flooded jungle type habitat that I'm doing. I've decided I want to reclaim the space for growing other plants, and so what I would do is I would try to remove most of this duckweed. I would put Flourish XL in this by Seachem, and that will kill Valsinaria and sometimes like Cypress hellfry or Ariel Collins. So be careful if you have those few things, but it will kind of burn out a lot of this this stuff here, the frog bit or duckweed or just a lot of the floating plants, but especially the ones that are floating leaves, that are just one leaf kind of floating without that intensive root system. It will really burn them out into kind of a more dried out and lighter yellow than vibrant green. They won't look like this lime green frog color. They will be a lighter yellow color. And that's when you turn your Powerhead on, and you can either get like a goldfish or any type of carp, and you can have them in there, and they're going to go ahead and eat it. I mean, even guppies and things like that do munch on it occasionally, mollies, guppies, platies, but they're not going to be your go-to. If you have them, great, but they're not going to be your go-to. And this is a big tank with a lot of surface area, I must admit. If I didn't have the top off in this window right here, if I had a glass or a lid over it, this wouldn't be happening quite so bad, most likely. But this is kind of perfect conditions for growing it. And the other little trick while we're here is you can take, when you don't have a ton of it, you can take just airline and just put a little valve stop or piece of you could use something like a Q-tip or a dowel or a little piece of something that fits in the airline, 1/4-inch airline, and you just float this, and then you move the duckweed and other plants that are floating out of the way, and that will leave you a portal into your tank. You guys get the idea. It'll leave you a portal into your tank and keep it clear so you can feed if you do like the look of the duckweed. However, duckweed hates turbulent water. So what I suggest as your 1, 2, 3 punch, dose it with XL, fill it to the top first. Dose it with Flourish XL. Be careful. Look up the plants that it can melt if you're worried about that at all, like Valsinaria, corkscrew valves, and metallic valves. And then get yourself 1 or 2 Powerheads and just turn them on so that they're reflecting to the next nearest wall, like not the wall that are on the 90-degree axis to the corner you mount it on, but rather so it hits a flat part of the wall over here. If you mounted it here, you'd have it hitting over here, and then it'll do this pinball effect and kind of work its way back and keep things moving. You can actually do 2 of them if you'd like. They're not that expensive. They're great for fish that are more active, more resilient to moving, like non-nano fish. But like these Danios, they love current anyways, so they're going to be cool with it. The guppies have fun with it as long as there's a spot where they can rest and get out of the flow. And the tetras, they're not all that big of fans of it. The cories will enjoy it as long as they have rocks and things to hide behind. And also plecos love it. They're used to it. But it can cause algae, whichever you want to call it, to grow. So then we're going to go to my next chemical weapon. All right. Next chemical weapon is hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. And so all we do is we take a syringe. You could use a turkey baster or a syringe, whatever you have handy that will get it into a very niche specific place. You can pick up syringes either at a local exchange if you live in a city like Seattle, where we have them. We happen to have them in my neighborhood, like on every corner for drug users. But they give out free needles. But you can also just pick them up, you know, at the pharmacy, like a normal human being, for insulin. They may give you weird looks, but they should sell them to you in most states. So then you take this and you just literally inject it into the black beard algae, into staghorn algae, and it just starts to eat away at it, and it will turn yellow and it will die. Now, duckweed hates this too, but you can't dose a ton of it. So what I recommend is, if you're going to go that route, and it's a really cool substance, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in just a sec. If you're going to go that route, don't do more than about, for every 10 gallons, I would say 2 tablespoons. Now, it does turn into water in your tank, which is great. So those bubbles you see, those are oxygen, and they're just pure oxygen and hydrogen coming off of it. And then the other part of it turns into water. So same thing if it sits in the bottle too long, or if you put it in a cut, once it reacts, it foams and it does that little bubbly type thing, because it's breaking down back into water and its constituent oxygen and hydrogen. So it is safe, it breaks down in the tank, but it will also treat things like planaria and hydra if you spot treat. And that's why I like the needle, because it really gets in there. I put some on a hydra colony right there. They're dead. So I just thought I'd go over that little bit with you. If you've got duckweed like this, just manually remove it. This is not a big deal. This is not a big deal. It's just from nets and things and water changes where I may have used a bucket that I shouldn't have. But see, there's hydra down in here on this leaf. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that syringe, and I'll just right at their base. And I'm talking for an area the size of this entire leaf. You just squirt a minuscule amount at the base of everything, or go back and forth and do that. And you can do that every few hours, every 6 hours, and it'll all dissipate and be fine. It'll dissipate way before that, but I don't want you guys to risk your fish getting sick. So you can do those spot treatments also to kill the duckweed too. If you see that it's down in the moss, you can spray clumps of it and so forth. So that is the breakdown of how I get rid of duckweed. Really keeping the water moving and then keeping your nitrites and nitrates lower will really, really help. So just doing those water changes. If you can't flood it over, that's really good for ponds and things where you flood it over, or barrels or outside, containers. You just flood it over and it all comes off the top. You kind of just work with it a bit. But what you do, pick the plants you want to save. If you have immersed growth, make sure you clean those immersed stems really well. And that is how I deal with duckweed. I will show you the results in the coming videos. Just check for updates. I didn't feel like you guys needed a time lapse of how I got rid of duckweed. It sounds like a boring process. It's just me scooping for an hour in fast forward. So I hope these little tips and tricks helped, and I hope that you guys have good luck getting rid of duckweed, because it is very hard to get rid of. Even like 1 or 2 little leaves will spread into this whole thing. That's what happened. I never bought duckweed. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Take care of your critters yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you made it this long with me talking about duckweed. Clearly, my other videos are way better than this, and you will probably enjoy them. So click that little bell button, too. And if you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon. I also have a Teespring with clothing, and then people sometimes just send stuff on PayPal because they think the other organizations and super chats and things like that are evil. So I don't blame you if that's your stance. Also, check out our Facebook group and join the conversation. Show pictures of your fish and yourself and all that good stuff. And I will talk to you guys later. Swim on. Bye.